Dear Bramblings, it's your Uncle Luke here. Hello, everybody. How's it going? Welcome back to the Dear Bramblin podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. Now, today we are actually going to be diving into part 4 of the My Irish Dance Story series that I'm doing. I can't believe it. Part 4. I am dumbfounded. I am shocked. I am surprised. I'm proud. I'm very proud of myself for finally talking about my story. You know, something that I've noticed within the past 10 years of me not competing is that I've developed this like aversion to watching anything Irish dance related on social media, on YouTube. I hate it. Anytime I heard accordion music playing like a reel or a hornpipe, I was like, ugh, my shoulders would go up to my ears. Like I just started shuddering. Like I got a huge trauma response anytime I thought about going back to Irish dance or like consuming this type of art. And honestly, reflecting back now on telling my story, I'm starting to realize like, hey, you just watched a whole bunch of world's content. You just watched a whole bunch of dancers dance. You just listened to accordion Irish dance music again and you're not shuddering. Like, what's going on? And I think that's just because I'm finally slotting these traumas into some sort of narrative and I'm perceiving it as less of a threat. I mean, it's been 10 years since I've been there, and I know that I'm most likely never going to come back in the way I did if I ever do. And yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just kind of finding meaning in all of this. And so I just want to say thank you guys for listening and for staying tuned. I really do appreciate it. Now today, I am talking with Oona from the Instagram page WMH_X_0, also known as World Medal Holder times 0. Yes, I'm talking with the meme lord herself. I am so excited to have her on the podcast. I stumbled upon her page maybe a few months ago, just by random. Actually, no, I don't know. I think I might have had a friend recommend it to me. I don't really quite remember. But since finding her page, I had no idea that there were memes out there that were perfectly curated to my pain. I had no idea. And here we are. There's a whole page littered with them. And, you know, okay, I'm going to mention. So, do you guys know the character, the bully character from the original Camp Rock, that like pretty blonde girl who'd always like spy on everyone else, and then when she kind of realized she's been a cruddy person and that one girl won the final jam, she went up to her and she just said like, that was really good, and when people are really good, someone needs to tell them. That's coming to mind right now because that's kind of what my story was with Oona, is that I just kind of felt so moved and understood and seen by her memes and her posts that I felt compelled to reach out to her on her DMs and just say like, hey, I know you don't know me. I know we've never met. I just stumbled on your page and I just want to give you a wholehearted thank you. And I started commenting a few times on her posts here and there about my own little thoughts, and she messaged back. And suddenly we started this dialogue, and I started sharing my story with her, and she was just like, hey, what about me? Can I be on the podcast as a guest? And I was like, oh my God. Are you really? You want to be on? Oh my gosh. So here we are. This is a two-parter conversation with Oona, and The topic that we're going to be diving into is going to be the Irish dance competitive culture. This is going to be really in depth. This is going to be really detailed. Like, we're leaving no stones unturned. The only thing that we're not going to be talking about are names. Something else that I do want to talk about is that this is going to get heavy, a little bit heavy, like a heavy shoe. Haha, no. And yeah, something that's really profound and fascinating about the beginning of Oona and I's conversation is we both connect on a way that is far more than we realized. Oona has also experienced death on a very personal level. So have I. And both of us can connect and agree upon the fact that Irish dance was so much harder to process than a literal death. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I think this is data that needs to be observed more closely. And I think it is also indicative to how intense the competitive Irish dance world actually is. It's not just all sashes and dresses and wigs and fake tans and vests and jackets and hair gel. It's life or death. Our bodies can't tell the difference. And yeah, I'm really excited for you guys to hear this conversation. So like I said, this is going to be part 1. Um but, without any further ado, let's dive. No, no, hold on. I'm not going to say dive. Let's leap. Let's birdie. Let's front click. Let's axle spin. Ooh, I like axle spins. They're one of my favorite moves. Let's axle spin into this conversation, and I'll see you guys on the other side. Ah, there we
Okay.
go. Awesome. Okay, well, Una, thank you so much
Yes.
for being here. I'm so excited that you're here. How are you?
Yeah. I'm good. It's a Wednesday night, so I do not have work on Thursdays, so I always enjoy Wednesday nights.
Nice. Yeah.
Even more so when I get to talk about Irish dance.
Yeah, which is what we're going to be talking about today. I'm so excited. I guess just before I dive into some of the topic, I usually like to just begin by saying that I'd really like to talk about just my experience and our experience, and I want to kind of try to leave
Hmm.
any names out.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. Um, I really also want to just ensure that we're trying to bring some language, some context to any competitive Irish dancer that is out there right now who might be experiencing some mental health, some trauma of some sort. And I do also want to just mention that I am not a counselor. I don't have any of this these fancy degrees.
I don't
So
either.
right? So take what we say with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And yeah, is there anything else I'm missing? I usually have this little spiel memorized, but I totally forgot it right now. I have been so busy. I'm currently working 3 jobs. I'm just trying to pay rent.
Oh my God. Exhausting.
I'm exhausted, and the fact that I'm still carving out some time for these meaningful conversations, I think maybe just means that this podcast really means a lot to me. And talking about my story and my traumas as a former competitive Irish dancer is important to me. And I don't know if there's anything that maybe you want to say before we dive right in.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say that that is totally relatable because, not that long ago I was working full time while working on my master's degree. I finished in December, but like I was still going all at it with my Irish dance stuff, still going because like just like with your podcast, my stuff I do on my Instagram account is so important to me. It's very valuable. So I make time for it.
Yeah, Definitely. So, for those who don't know, Una is the essentially the she runs the Instagram page called what, WMH underscore OX or X times zero or something.
Yeah, WMH underscore X underscore zero, which means world medal holder times zero. And yeah, basically, for some context, what that means is so a world medal is the top certain percentage of people in the world championships in Irish dance will get a medal. For me, that was the thing I always hoped I'd achieve, and it did not happen.
Hmm.
So I made that my username, first of all, because I think it's funny. And also just because I think a lot of Irish dancers just make their personality or like label themselves by the titles they've achieved. And I kind of want to show it that behind the titles or whatever placement or your dancing ability, we're all people. We all have a story, we all have a whole life, and we are so much more than the titles we have or have not won.
Ooh, god dang, I've already got shivers. Um, I relate to everything you said there. It took me such a long time to essentially like surrender to the fact that I am no longer a competitive Irish dancer. It took me a really long time to surrender to the fact that these goals or these movies that I would play in my head are probably not going to happen anymore. I'm probably too old. Yeah, when I came across your Instagram page, my God, like,
Wait,
I
how
think
did you end up finding me? Did I like just appear on your feed?
I think you did just appear on my feed. Um, I think I may have also had a friend recommend it to me.
Oh,
I can't really remember what. However, when I did finally like find your Instagram page, it was this post. It's like these AI generated possums who were being Irish dance adjudicators, and I think you did
oh
like
my God.
a comment box where you asked everyone like, "What's the meanest thing an adjudicator has ever written on your written results page?"
Yeah.
And then you kind of created this little page, and I started scrolling through it, and like there's just something about finding memes that talk about your pain so specifically. There, I didn't even think this would ever happen, and it was one of those moments where I'm like, I'm not alone.
No, and
I'm not alone in this
yeah.
weird shame. Like, here is an Instagram page where it's littered with memes, literally curated to my specific, unique trauma.
Oh
What
my
the
God,
hell?
yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly why I do it because as you've talked about in some of your other episodes, it's like there's so much shame around it. And and there's also a reason why I put my full name and I show my face because I want to be like, look, you might not ever, have a globe or achieve what you want in Irish dance. And there's so many of these situations that leave us feeling like total losers. Like literally,
Mm,
I felt like the biggest loser in the world. And I want to show dancers that, you can go on, life does go on. You still can, you know, be happy with who you are while still acknowledging the pain that has happened in Irish dance. And I
mm,
think, for me to deal with painful situations, I always do it with humor. I think
yeah.
I will make a joke of anything. So I think it's very nice to just have the connection with other Irish dancers because I'm telling you, I have made genuine good friends just through spamming Instagram with cats and opossums, AI generated opossums, because it's like there's so many situations where it's like I felt like I was alone, but we're not really alone. It's
Mm,
just no one talks about it because it's seen as shameful.
yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, with all that being said, I would like to just maybe begin by asking, would you be down to tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah.
Like you start anywhere you'd like. You could tell any type of story that you'd like, but let's. I just want to give the floor a little bit to you, and let you introduce yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So, hi, I'm Una. I run as I said, I run that Instagram page, WMH underscore X underscore zero. But so my Irish dance experience started in approximately 2003. So I was 6 or 7, and it was just my grandmother saw a ad for a local school in the newspaper, and there happened to be a local fesh. She took me to a fesh to watch, and I was obsessed, not with the dancing itself, but with the sparkly dresses.
Mm.
I loved the bling. And keep in mind, this was 2003, so it was like glitter dot. Um, but
Oh yeah.
I, I have an unusual experience because so many people around my age became obsessed with river dance. I remember when I started taking lessons shortly after I watched that fesh, my dad saw Riverdance on TV and he taped it for me and tried to show me. And he's like, these are the best Irish dancers in the world. I found it incredibly boring because I was like, where are the sparkles? I want the sparkly dresses. But I danced at in like a recreational class for the first couple of years. So I did not take it seriously at all. I was just, I didn't even know feshes existed until I was 10.
Hmm.
So I went to my first fesh. I was an under 11 advanced beginner. I placed in nothing. So
Really?
yeah,
Oh,
I came home empty handed at my first fesh. Didn't help that I danced a slip jig to a light jig and a light jig to a slip jig because I did not know the difference.
fair.
But I only did 3 dances and I didn't place in anything. But I don't know. It was just like at that age, it felt like all the kids around me had activities they were really into. For some, it was like gymnastics, swimming, theater, and I tried a bunch of different things, but they never really caught on. Like, I tried theater. I would do summer camp where we would, put on musicals. And I loved the idea of being on stage, but I
Hmm.
never got the main roles because I cannot sing for the life of me. My singing voice is horrendous, so that's why I was always in the chorus. So, you know, theater didn't go well for me. And then I tried swimming and gymnastics and Irish dance all at the same time. And, Irish dance was the one that caught on that I really got really into. And, I live in New Jersey, so there are so many feshes, and I've
Hmm.
realized through meeting other dancers, it's quite an unusual experience that we have feshes pretty much like nearly every weekend within a 2 hour drive. Like I would go
Wow.
to like 2 to 4 feshes a month sometimes,
Wow.
like sometimes double feshes. So I was furiously feshing. And because I was just so motivated, I did go through the grades relatively quickly. So, like from my first fesh, I went through all the grades in a year.
Mm.
So I did in the fall of 2006, I was an advanced beginner. And then a year later, I was in prelim and I did my first Oireachtas in 2007. And yeah, I just got super into it. Like, it was just literally my everything. And what's so
Yeah.
interesting is you always have this idea that when you reach a certain level of dance, dance will no longer stress you out. But what I find is that it was kind of the opposite because what I loved about dance personally is just the constant work in progress nature of it. There's always something you can do better. I really loved the focus on the details. I loved the challenge. I loved constantly pushing myself to improve and see what I can do better. I enjoyed drilling. So that
Mm.
really served me when I was a grades level dancer and when I was in prelim, because
Hmm.
at those levels there are a lot of things you can improve. So you you stay motivated. But then once you get to open champs, you know, by that level, everyone is good.
Yeah.
Especially when you're getting to worlds level, everyone is good. So it's like the things that distinguish you from the top, it could just be a matter that is when natural talent or who your teacher is will come into play.
Mm.
And the truth is that you know, going through the grades, it's pretty much a matter of obtaining a certain level of skill. An advanced beginner, their skills are not as developed as, let's say, a prelim dancer. But,
Hmm.
most dancers, if they put in the effort to reach that level, they can get there. Not every dancer is going to ever get to worlds or recall it worlds or win worlds. And I think there is such I don't know what's like a narrative within Irish dance that, this oversimplified, like magical storybook of I listened to my dance teacher and I practiced at home, so I won worlds. And it kind of is very shamey in that
Mm.
it makes you think that, like, oh, I did everything in my power. I worked hard. I went to every class. I practiced at home. I still didn't recall at Worlds. Am I just a loser? Like, is there
Oh.
something wrong with me? And that's why over time, that pressure got to me, that feeling that there was something wrong with me, that I just like was not good enough. That combined with, other frustrations just generally with dance, and also, with life circumstances, I was off to college, so that by 2014, that the summer before college, I was so anxious and frustrated with dance, but also as a kid and a teen, I was extremely socially anxious. I like
Mm.
never really had a solid group of friends. I was
Mm.
kind of isolated, so I was a mess, like trying to figure out college.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So it was weird. Like retiring from Irish dance, although it was voluntary, I could have continued on. It really felt like it was two terrible options, and I had to pick the lesser of two evils. And I think
Mm.
that's one thing I'd like to get across is like you can grieve the ending of your dance career while also being relieved that you don't have to deal with it anymore.
Oh, wow. No, I love that you mentioned grief there for a second. It's definitely been an emotion I've been very familiar with this past year.
Yeah.
But what's really fascinating is that this is something I also found, and I don't have any like solid evidence that this is a thing,
Hmm.
but every single time I talk to someone who is grieving, they mention relief somehow.
Oh God, yeah.
It's like my hot take right now that you know how like love and belonging are always dancing with each other, like they're always two
Yeah.
emotions that need to be together. I think grief and relief have a very similar relationship in that there is always some sort of like realization that you can now surrender to the thing that you thought would make you a flawed human being.
Hmm.
It's almost as if like grief is the only thing that can melt the concrete in which I've buried my issues under.
I love this because I think it's so many. So I was actually just thinking about this because I was getting some ideas in my head about like a post about how these things can simultaneously be true with like retiring from dance and leaving that part of you behind. And like I said earlier, I think before we started recording, like I was better able to process literal deaths than some things that happened in Irish dance, like I
Yeah.
said, because it tends to be socially acceptable to grieve a death, but not so much so Irish dance because people don't know about it. But like I'm telling you, like there were times when okay, so let's this one I will go to oh, what years? It was Worlds 2014. It was my last Worlds. I didn't recall for the fourth time.
Hmm.
And to me, that was just the epitome of being a loser. That was
Hmm.
like, and it's like you do lose perspective, right? Because you know, in reality, there are many dancers who would just, you know, dream of making it to open champs, let alone even go to worlds. And meanwhile, I had gone there four times, but I was like up until, let's say, 3 a.m. or so. I was just in a daze, lying on the floor, staring at the ceiling, just like, totally like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And there
Wow.
are only literally there are only two other times in my life I experienced that same kind of just like being totally in a daze, like not sleeping, just staring at the wall. One was when, to protect this person's privacy, I'm not going to give details, but someone who's very important to me attempted to kill themselves, and they were not successful. But just thinking about it really got me like in that staring at the wall in a daze, not sleeping. The other one was, when my dad literally died. And it's
Hmm.
it's so insane that like that reaction to Irish dance mirrors that of experiencing a literal death.
Wow.
And it's
Wow.
because, yeah, yeah, so that's where all of my, SpongeBob memes come from.
Okay.
Because, SpongeBob falling apart, like all the
Yes.
SpongeBob
Ah.
sobbing, like depressed SpongeBob. Because I'm telling you, like me doing badly in Irish dance result, I was literally a cartoon character. I was just like so over the top, so dramatic.
Hmm.
But in the moment, it literally feels like the end of the world.
It does. And you're reminding me of like my second entry of the little series I'm doing for the My Irish Dance Stories. Um,
Yeah.
when I wanted to kill myself because I didn't recall at a nationals. And then you're also making me think about how like I saw my friend Ryan pass away right in front of me. He fell to his death and
Yeah.
I was the first on the scene, giving him CPR and everything. And
Oh my God. Yeah, yeah.
when I found out that he passed away from the paramedic, like first memory that popped into my head was when I found out I didn't recall at nationals.
It really does. Like, it feels the same.
It feels the same, and there's something wicked to be said about that. Like there's just something so extreme.
It's so extreme because, I know some people, and I've compared it to, like, you'd say, like, it's similar to like an exam in school. But, I have never gone to such extremes with exams or with school. I'll be stressed before I get a test back. I'd be, disappointed if I didn't do as well as, but it would kind of be like I'd be disappointed for a little bit and then I'd just move on. With Irish
Mm-hmm.
dance, I didn't have that. I think I was more able to objectively see school and I didn't like identify with it to the extent that I did with Irish dance.
Oh, totally. No, you say that, and it's also making me think about how growing up for me, and even still now, I have such a huge dysregulation when it comes to feeling nervous. And
Hmm.
I attribute that all to my experience in Irish dance. And I explained it in my first entry how, I just was put into that fight or flight response so frequently when it came to Irish dance, when it came to awards, because I felt as though my self worth was at threat all the time.
Yes,
It's not
yes.
even like I'm afraid of like what other people are going to be saying about me behind my back. It's like, no, it's how I thought about myself. And that was what was at threat because I thought if I didn't get first or second, I'm a loser.
Yes. Yes.
And so like your story is just so relatable to me and it's like
Right?
holy
Yeah,
crap.
yeah. Because okay, so like the thing is that, yeah, no, the way you put it, like your self-worth is at risk. That's how I felt. Because it was literally like the results of this competition would determine whether or not I could be okay with myself or if I need to hate myself.
Mm.
And that's why I say that like on my page all the time. I'm like, never let Irish dance make you hate yourself. Don't be the reason someone hates themselves in Irish dance. Don't like make Irish dance question your value. And it's like I put that in different formats, but that's like the message, the main message I like to get across with everything I do on my page. It's like because I really just hate the idea that there could be kids out there who are, thinking that they're worthless pieces of garbage because they didn't really call it a competition.
I know I did.
I did too. Oh, oh, believe me. And it's also there is such I think there's a lot of judgment.
Mhm.
And I think I like to kind of be really open about my story so there's more understanding about why people act a certain way. Now, if you see my picture, which I've memed the picture so many times, it's me at my last nationals.
Mm.
I could not, and I could not hold myself together for a couple minutes. I was a mess because it felt like my whole life fell apart. But anyway, I've memed that because now it's funny looking back. But anyway, a lot of people saw me as some sort of entitled brat who was spoiled. I expected to do better. I was entitled. But that is not the case at all. And that's
Mm.
not the case for if you see someone crying at awards, it's very easy to make that assumption about them. But I tend to think that more often than not, it might just be a kid who they were under so much pressure, and in that moment, they really do feel like they're just worthless and their whole
Mm.
life fell apart.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure there are some people who are just entitled and expect better, but I think just especially given that Irish dance tends to attract the very perfectionistic type of person, there are kids who it's like someone might judge them and say they're entitled, they're a bad sport, but it's like, it's a lot to ask of a child, like a literal child to be able to have the emotional capacity to put in such extreme pressure and
Oof.
then just be stoic all the time.
Oh,
Like these kids just hold it together for so long and then they're just under such extreme pressure. It does come out eventually. And I think people need to be a lot less judgmental.
wow. And I think something that's really important that you mentioned there is that for the majority of the competitors in this sport,
Yeah.
they are children.
Yes. That's the
This is a
thing. Like,
children's sport, right? And we are
yeah,
holding them to the emotional standard of a fully matured adult
I agree with that. Yes.
and putting them through almost like reality show like situations.
Oh my God.
At least this is kind of how I described it in like my award ceremony thing, but it's like literally hundreds upon hundreds of people in say the nationals when you're getting your awards are crowded into a ballroom, and this like 12-year-old kid has to hustle with the fact that they might not be getting the award that they so desperately wanted in their mind,
Yeah.
and they have to pretend like whatever they get they're grateful for because they're in front of so many people.
Yeah.
What is that person going to say? What is mom and dad going to say? What is my teacher going to
Yeah.
say?
Yeah. Yeah. And what's insane, it's like I said, with these kids who just identify so much with Irish dance, it does have the same emotional reaction as a literal death. So
Mhm.
asking a child to just be stoic and all like professional when they're heartbroken would be like asking someone to watch someone die and then have no reaction.
Wow. Ooh, okay, hold on. Could you say that like one more time? I got full on
Yes.
shivers.
Okay. So, because for these kids, for a lot of them, Irish dance is their everything. And from my own personal experience, the emotional reaction I've had to a literal death was the same as that of the devastation of not getting the placement I wanted. So, if you're just keeping the emotional side of it, you're asking literal children, some who are 10, 11, 12, to, react as if everything is fine when their whole life, or in their mind, they feel like their whole life just fell apart. It would be like if you went up to them and asked them if someone died right in front of them and you expect them to not react.
It's just heinous. It's
Yeah, and I'm obviously like, I disclaimer, like, I think you already said this, but I am not like qualified in any of this. I'm just sharing my own opinions from my own
mhm.
experiences. But yeah, it's, you know, you're expecting kids to just not have any emotions, which is just so unrealistic.
Yeah, wow. And I want like circling back to that little moment of where you're mentioning like entitlement
Yeah.
and how maybe the perception of a child who is hustling with their own devastation might appear to be this entitled little brat.
Yes.
It really makes me think about this one time when I was a kid. So, fun fact about me is that like I really love Pokemon. Always have.
Oh, I know that. I know you
Always
do.
have. I'm currently wearing a Pokemon shirt right now. And
Nice.
anyways, um, when I was really young, my best friend at the time actually stole one of my Pokemon games and just erased it.
Oh no.
He started a new
Oh
game,
my God, no.
and all of my little virtual friends were gone forever. And
No.
I remember going to my mom and I told her what happened, and she just said, "It's just a game, Luke." And I had a full on meltdown.
But to a kid, it's not. It's like,
No, well, I mean, this type of grief that I was experiencing, it's actually called disenfranchised grief. So it's like a special type of grief that we feel when we grieve the loss of something that seems insignificant.
and that's Irish dance.
And that's Irish dance.
Yes,
Whew.
and that's why I think it's like I said, it's totally socially acceptable to grieve a person dying, or but like Irish dance, like it's like to the outside world, it's like it's just a jig, get over it.
Yeah.
And even when I had that iconic moment on stage at Nationals, I was 18 at the time. I was not a child. But I think that just goes to show that to expect that level of professionalism. Also, the other thing, add to it that it's a very overstimulating environment. People are screaming, music is blasting, and it's usually late at night when these kids have been up since like 6 in the morning. So they're
Yeah.
also very exhausted. So, like you said, it's very much like a reality show situation, except with children.
Yeah. Wow. And with all that being said, I was hoping to maybe dive a little bit more into the intended topic that I was hoping to chat with you a little bit. I think
Yeah,
I think we're already like alluding to it. We're already talking about it, which is great. I'm already feeling like this is a really good conversation. But I was hoping to talk with you a bit more about just the culture of competitive Irish dance.
yeah,
And so, where I want to kind of begin is mainly just with this phrase or statement that I heard a long time ago, and it's that language is the blueprint to creating a culture. And what I mean by language is in the study of linguistics, they actually call it pragmatics.
okay,
And this is essentially the study of taking certain words and like analyzing the emotional weight that they have in a collective group.
okay.
And some great examples. Like I used to work at Starbucks,
Hmm.
and we don't call each other employees in that company. We called each other partners.
Oh.
And just the shift in that language created this culture in that work environment where I felt like I could give feedback to my manager. I could give feedback to my district
Mm.
manager. People below me could give feedback to me.
Yeah.
That we're all in this together. That we're partners in this little hellscape. That was
Hmm.
Starbucks.
Oh my God, I couldn't imagine working at Starbucks, the chaos. Everyone loves their Starbucks.
It was chaos. It absolutely. But yeah, I guess something that I wanted to ask is like, is there any other words like maybe not Irish dance related, but is there any other words that you know of that kind of evoke some sort of emotional response? I don't know.
Oh,
Kind of going off left field, but like,
that's a tough one.
yeah,
I, hmm. Yeah, I don't know.
that's all right. I think some good examples could be there's this guy, his name is John Koenig, and he's essentially creating this YouTube channel slash book called The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows.
Okay.
And I saw his TED talk a little while ago, and he said something that will always stick with me. And he said that words aren't real, they're things that we create that we pour ourselves into.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Oh my gosh.
That's very, very deep.
Yeah, I think it's so deep, and it really it elicits these thoughts and these connections about, culture and language, and how when we're very deliberate with our choice of words, we can create a culture that is kind of built upon these like emotions.
Yeah.
Some of the words that he created, like in the last podcast about body dysmorphia that I talk about the word canopsia.
Yes, that I knew it was some weird word that I've never heard before. But
Yeah,
yes.
right? Canopsia being the eerie, forlorn feeling you get when you go to a place that's usually full of life, but is now empty and abandoned. And I didn't know there was a word for that feeling, but I know deep down that I experienced this before.
Oh yeah.
And to have a word to pour that experience into makes me feel whole.
Yeah, yeah. It does. And it helps you like express yourself, I think, because especially like when I think looking back to my Irish dance experience, there was so much, there were so many times where I just felt like uncomfortable or unhappy, but I couldn't comprehend it further than that. It was just I was uncomfortable. I was
Mm,
unhappy. That's all I knew.
yeah, almost as if like you were pretending to be someone that you didn't have any more energy to be.
Yes.
Or at least that was me. Yeah, just so yeah, just like wanted to invite maybe the listener, maybe you as well, to just kind of think about your experience in competitive Irish dance and just like think about some of the phrases or some of the words that were commonly used in that culture and just try to think about it. Like some of the words that come to my mind when it comes to Irish dance is like the deliberate use of feis,
Oh yeah,
which is the Gaelic word for festival, right?
fesh.
Right?
That's so funny when you think that it literally means festival, because festival you associate with like something fun. Um,
Yeah.
and I found fesh is stressful.
So stressful. I found them to be the opposite of celebration quite frequently. The only
Yeah,
time I was celebrating was when I like actually got like first or second at a competition.
yeah, yeah,
Other than that, it's like no, it's a place to feel like well, actually, if it was a place to do battle almost. It was like this is my battlefield
yeah, right?
and like someone could lose their lives.
Or like Oireachtas.
Oh, a Roctus, right?
Oireachtas, I think it means like gathering or something. I don't know what it means,
I
but
think it means like governing body.
interesting.
I think that's what it means. Because I know in Gaelic or in Ireland, they use that word to mean like government.
Okay.
I guess it kind of makes sense how the Oireachtas is like all the different schools or
Yeah.
governing bodies coming together to create one large region or governing body of some sort.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
My God, Oireachtas was such a that's such a weird competition for me.
Yeah, you are Western Canada, right?
I am, yes.
So did you have to travel very far? Because I know like I mean I've never been to that area of the world, but I know it's much more spread out than
Oh yeah.
my area. Yeah, because Oireachtas was drivable every year.
Yeah. Yeah, Western Canada for Irish dance consisted of the provinces of British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba.
Okay.
And these provinces are like Texas-sized provinces. Um,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
they're huge pieces of land. However, we're here in Canada, we're not as populated as say like Eastern United States. I think actually the entire population of California is equivalent to the entire population of Canada.
Oh my God. Well, that makes sense because like if you go further up north, it's very, very cold and there's not many people there.
Yeah. So most of my Oireachtas competitions were in say like Edmonton or Vancouver, and I
Okay.
think towards the end of my uh, dance career, they started branching out to like say Saskatoon or Regina or Winnipeg.
Okay.
I never really competed in those competitions. Actually, I think I had stopped competing when they started branching out to those cities.
Okay. Did you have to fly?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Whenever I was in Edmonton, you always had to take a flight. Otherwise, it was like a 12 to 16-hour drive across the Rocky Mountains.
Oh my God. Oh,
Um,
see, this is the thing that I find so fascinating.
yeah.
Just like talking to people from other regions. Like, I was, I have some friends who are from like Western region and Southern region USA, and it's just like I don't know. It's like I don't quite understand this concept of how far away things are. Like I just would, like you mentioned some cities in Western Canada, and I'm just like, oh yeah, Western Canada, they're probably close.
No.
Meanwhile, like, no, because it's crazy, right? Because I'm just thinking, like, if I drove like 16 hours, I could get so to like so many different states. Like for me, Oireachtas was always a consistent 1.5 hour drive every year.
Okay. Wow.
And there were over 100 people in my competition usually.
Oh, holy macaroni and cheese.
Yeah.
Wow. I no, in Western Canada, I think the biggest competition for girls got up to like maybe 60, maybe.
Okay. Yeah. 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 That
We
and
were like it's a like a lot of space, like landmass
yeah.
wise, but population wise, we were a very small region.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I noticed too. Like I went to the Western region USA Oireachtas this year. That's what I noticed. I was like, wow, this is literally half of the country, and the competitions are significantly smaller than in my region, which was just 4 states.
Oh
Just,
wow.
yeah, New Jersey, New York. Actually, not even 4 states because half of Pennsylvania falls in the Mid America region. So,
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah.
Jeez Louise. Yeah, no, that's a Oireachtas was always an interesting competition for me because I always found it so much easier than just regular local competitions. Because all I had was maybe one other competitor
Right. Yeah, yeah.
for at least like 2, 3 years. So like I like to go around telling like, "Hi, I'm a four-time Oireachtas champion," which is true. I won it four
Hmm.
times, but two of which were with only one other competitor.
Oh, okay. That's typical for boys' competitions, though.
Yeah, yeah. There was a few times where I did win where we had like seven competitors.
Okay.
Yeah, and when I won those, like, oh, top of the world, that felt amazing.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, it's just kind of weird. That's like a cultural thing that I've noticed is that I go around telling people who have been in the Irish dance community that like, yeah, I won my Rocktas 4 times, and they look at me like, oh my God, really? You're like that good?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking at the back of my head like, no, I'm not
No,
that. No.
it's so funny because it's very much the same thing. I think with going to Worlds, like I'll like casually mention that to a non-dancer and they'll be like, "Oh my God, you went to Worlds 4 times." I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, I think that could be something we could mention though, is that there's a minimization that the Irish dance culture has when it comes to like these major competitions, especially if you're attending these major competitions year after year. It's like, oh, you went to Worlds, ho hum, like good job.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, yeah, it's
it's
kind of like, "Oh, you went to Worlds? Okay, now win Worlds and I'll care."
yeah, yeah, it's like you're suddenly, even though you've achieved these really great accomplishments in the grand scheme of like the entire world, like in this niche
Hmm.
little population, you're still not good enough.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I think that is very much the culture of Irish dance. I think especially more so since, back when I was competing, social media was not it did definitely exist and it was pretty significant. Instagram really started to become a thing, but it was mainly
Yeah.
just like Facebook and the early stages of Instagram. We didn't have such easy Also, we didn't have flash TV, so we did not have such easy access to dancers. And I think one thing I personally hate this about Irish dance is the idolization of children. I find it very
Mm.
creepy. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically like they treat top dancers as like a different species of person. Like they're like godlike figures and they're like perfect and everyone should aspire to be them. And
Oh my
ever
God.
since I made my account, which I try to counteract that, I try because honestly it hurts the top dancers too
Oh yeah.
because they're expected to live up to such a standard, and it's like dehumanizing because people think like, oh, just because this person, let's say, won a world title, that you now Irish dance owns them. Like you could say whatever you want about them. They're just not even a person. Like they're just a thing that dances that you watch. The way people act entitled to personal information about people's life, like let's say a top dancer retires, everyone
Mm-hmm.
is like, "Oh, what happened? I need to know why. What are they doing now?" It's like, they're people too. And
Mm.
their lives aren't perfect. They're allowed to be unhappy. They're allowed to suffer with mental health just like anyone else. So it's kind of like it creates very much a like if you're a top dancer, you're isolated from the rest of them. But then if you're not a top dancer, you see the top dancers and you wish you were them and you feel insecure and like you're
Mm-hmm.
inferior and there's something wrong with you.
Yes. Wow. Oh. Sorry, that hit me. What's coming up for me is also this. There's like this hot take that I have. Maybe it's not a hot take. Maybe it's a real thing. I don't know. I just work here. Um, but I feel as though shame can also manifest itself in, like, oftentimes when we think about shame, we think about people who say, "I'm a failure. I'm a loser. I'm worthless."
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
yeah.
think shame can also be, I'm the best. I'm undefeated. I'm amazing. This is kind of my hot take. And it's been mainly because I think it's all deriving from this one place that we are describing ourselves as only one thing.
Yes.
And it makes me think about, there's this female MMA fighter that got really famous back in the day. I think her name was Ronda Rousey,
Okay.
and won so many of these fights in a row that she quickly adopted this title, undefeated Ronda Rousey, until one day she got defeated.
Yeah.
And there is this. interview. She went on the Ellen show,
Okay.
and there's this interview. I was remember watching it, and she was sitting on the guest side of the Ellen show, that on that chair, and she's looking all fabulous and all that, but you could see on her face it was, dare I say, an iconic Una face.
Oh yeah.
Like there's some sort of twinge of like shame and disappointment,
Oh
knowing
yeah.
that she's no longer this undefeated entity. And
Yes.
something that she said to Ellen is that being undefeated is a choice, so I choose to still be undefeated. And there's something really empowering about that, but at the exact same time there's something really depressing about that.
Yes, because and that's another thing I think like with that hurts these kids who are in Irish dance who are getting because the person you're talking about is a grown woman. Now, if we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about kids in Irish dance who are winning titles, and you
Mm-hmm.
have all these like creepy fan pages popping up idolizing them and like, that kind of thing. And I know this too because I have gotten to know, multiple top dancers just through my page. It's like whether internal pressure or a lot of times it comes from the teacher too. These
Mm.
kids learn that they are only valuable if they maintain their titles. So it's like, whereas the kids who are not winning titles feel like they're worthless because they don't have titles, the kids who do have the titles live in constant fear of losing them because they believe
Mm.
they are not valuable if they don't have the titles. Which is why I say that like getting second at Worlds can be just as devastating as not recalling at Oireachtas.
Oh
Because
man.
if you have that identification with Irish dance that your only value is if you can get the results, it doesn't matter if you're trying to win worlds or if you're trying to get a recall at Oireachtas. It's the same.
Wow. I have a few things that are popping up when you say that. First thing, I remember this time at a Worlds, I was sitting with a dance friend of mine, and this dance friend of mine is like world class, has
Hmm.
achieved some of the most incredible results in Irish dance, and
Yeah, yeah,
typically they're on the podium holding a globe. And
right.
this year, when the results got read out, they were like just below top five,
Okay.
and the tears that started falling from them.
Yeah,
And here's me sitting right next to them, just being like, I would kill for that result that you just got.
absolutely. Yeah,
And I remember I looked at him and I just told him like, I don't know if it was appropriate in the moment. I really don't. I mean, I was a kid too,
yeah, yeah,
but I just told him like, this placement is probably better than anything I could ever achieve. So I hope you don't dwell on this too much.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's a very hard situation to be in. Both
Hmm.
it for both of you in that case, because it's like, both kids end up feeling terrible because the one who's devastated about believe is a bad result, then they just feel ashamed that they're so upset about something and I've experienced that too with me. It's, the nationals where I had my iconic photo. I was
Hmm.
that came from being two off of worlds qualifying. And for
Mm.
me, because the year before I did worlds qualify at nationals. So
Wow.
not worlds qualifying again, that was like the epitome of failure. Like I could like not even qualifying for worlds. And keep in mind, there was still Aractas. Like this was just not qualifying at nationals. Aractas hadn't even happened yet, so it wasn't like I outright didn't qualify. I didn't qualify at nationals. That was the epitome of failure. And there were people around me who are like, there are so many dancers here who, would kill to just recall. And that just made
Yeah.
me feel awful. Like, that made
Mm.
me feel so much worse because it's like, oh, not only am I a loser, but also now, in addition to being a loser, I'm apparently a terrible person too. So it's
Mm.
very tricky because, while you definitely need to be mindful of who you're with, you probably if you're devastated about not getting a world qualification, you probably shouldn't go to your friend who didn't recall to talk about that in that moment. But it is just, that's a thing I think I like to get across on my Instagram. It's like the emotions that come from this crazy high stress, oftentimes toxic environment of Irish dance,
Mm-hmm.
they're shared across the levels. Like it doesn't, no dancing ability or no title will protect you from experiencing these emotions. Like whether you are in the grades or you are a world champion, the feelings of getting a bad result or like they're the same.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing that's also coming up for me, and I'm just curious, your
Yeah.
perspective, but like, what do you think is the difference between success and mastery?
Ooh. So success, the image of, someone getting a result. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
mastery, I see that more as like, mastering a skill. Let's say you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to learn a new set dance and you have a tricky set of rhythm and you practice
Yeah.
it and then you practice it till you get it. I would call that
Mm-hmm.
mastery, but mastery might not lead to, I suppose, success
Mm-hmm.
in the competition world. And I think success is very subjective. What success
Yeah.
means to one person could, maybe you define success as getting a world title, or maybe you define success as learning your traditional St. Patrick's Day and being able to do the full thing without missing a beat. Um,
Yeah.
so it just varies by the person.
Totally.
But I think, okay, going off of that with my experience, what I loved about Irish dance was the process of mastering new skills. That was
Mm.
incredibly rewarding for me. And that was
Mm-hmm.
that I think the reason why I was so motivated to practice was because I loved mastering the skills, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that was something that, you could always feel confident in. Like if you work on a skill and then you see the improvement in that skill, that is
Mm.
something you have with you regardless of the results. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, for me, I heard her name's Dr. Sarah Lewis, and I've mentioned her quite a few times in my podcast, but I love her definition of success versus mastery. What she says approximately is that success is the punctuated moments on a timeline.
Oh.
And these punctuated moments are moments that you can essentially take and put into your pocket and bring out
Mhm.
later to show other people how worthy you are.
Yeah.
Whereas mastery is there's a goal that's in your vision, but just out of reach. And
Mhm.
it's the constant reaching of towards that goal, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And what I think is, so as I said earlier, what was incredibly rewarding for me about Irish dance was that constant striving, the constant work in progress nature of it. But that was, when I look back, I'm like, the placement aspect of it stressed me out. Reaching for
Mm-hmm.
placements, that like kind of paralyzed me with fear. Whereas the striving, like I could get so lost in the moment if I was just in my basement drilling a step because the
Oh, yeah.
focus was on a challenge, but a challenge that I could realistically achieve. I can keep working on a skill to get it better. And it was almost like it was fun for me, even when it was
Mm,
difficult. I really loved that. Whereas results, like outward success, that is so out of your control. You can
yeah.
make incredible improvements in your dancing skill and it not show in the results because the results are going to, they're going to vary based on who's in the competition and who the judges are and how people dance on the day. Whereas, if you work on improving a skill, you're going to have that improvement of the skill no matter what. Like, it's not based on what some judge thinks of you or how other people do. And you know what's interesting? This just made me think of something. I experienced
Mhm.
something very similar in school. So
Mm.
I'll compare my experience in high school versus college versus grad school. So in high school, the way the classes were set up, it was very much, you would do well on the tests, the assignments, if you could do them to a certain standard. So if you could show that you understand the material, you'll get a good grade. So that was motivating for me because I was like, okay, if I know I put in the work, then I can get a good grade.
Mm-hmm.
College was set up different. So I was a biology major. So
Okay.
for whatever reason, Boston College was weird in that they
Mm-hmm.
put it on a curve system. So basically, what that means is some person in the administration of the college decided that the class average for science majors has to be a C plus. So
Okay.
yeah, it had to be a C plus. Like the professors literally got in trouble if the class average was too high. But at that point, like, it wasn't about showing that you understand the material. It was about how well can you do on this impossible test where the averages tended to be in the 60s, sometimes even the 50s. It was how
Mm-hmm.
well you did compared to your peers.
Mm.
So you could study so hard, but if other people did better on this really difficult test, then you're going to get a bad grade. And
Wow.
that was college was the first time I ever had, test taking anxiety. I was always very confident about school because I was like, oh, I study, I put in the work, I'm going to do well. In
Mm-hmm.
college, it was more like, um, yeah, I'm going to study, but I still might not do well. And that
Yeah.
was very hard. And I think that's the same kind of concept with Irish dance, like mastering a skill versus trying to get that outward success, because the variable is it's how you do at a certain skill versus how you do compared to other people.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's a really incredible metaphor. And I totally relate to that. And it really makes me think about mastery in a whole nother way. Because for me, one of the biggest variables or
Mm-hmm.
aspects that helped me kind of like release and relinquish the shame about not achieving, this idea I had in my head was adopting an identity of Irish dance master versus Irish dance champion,
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
right? Because a champion is someone who should be like a 12-time Oireachtas champion or like 8-time world champion. I don't know. Like that's a
Mm-hmm.
champion. That's someone
Mm-hmm.
who can clearly go out to a competition, win it, come back the next year, win it again, come back the next year. Like they are clearly a champion. That's the identity. But for me, like a master is someone who's chosen a route or
Mm-hmm.
journey, a road in life and has decided to accept all of the ups and all of the downs at the exact same time
Ooh.
and realize that the whole thing is just a journey, and no matter what anyone says or what how anyone wants to measure your proficiency in this journey, it doesn't matter because I've chosen to become a master.
That is a very good way to put it. I love that so much. And this is another thing that I think is really important. So, one thing I noticed, there tends to be a trend towards people, defining themselves as their Irish dance results. Like, you see all these bios that are like, they list their placement at like how many times they've won this, how many times they've won this, which is why I, have my bio, which is on Instagram, which is ironic. I put what I have not achieved. And that's for
Mm-hmm.
the purpose of, like, I didn't want people to think that their results are who they are or define
Mm-hmm.
them, because they don't. They don't even
Mm-hmm.
define who they are as a dancer, because you could be a great dancer and just the competitions don't go your way for whatever reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, my friends, I think I'm going to pause it there for right now. Now, if you do want to catch the rest of my conversation with Oona from the Instagram page, WMH_X_0, also known as World Medal Holder times 0, feel free to tune in next week. I will be posting the next part of that conversation, which, there's going to be a lot more interesting phrases or words or concepts to just really start thinking about. Because, let me tell you, I've been thinking a lot about how there's so many intentions and so many words that are purposely used in the competitive Irish dance world. Like it's supposed to be some sort of like fairy princess, rainbows and unicorns type of thing. But the reality is that I feel as though they're quite incongruent with what they actually are. Now, for anyone who is curious and anyone who maybe is relating really hard to when I compared the experience of a fesh to that of a battlefield, I decided to go into Google Translate, take this with a grain of salt, but apparently the word for battle in Gaelic is ka, and it's spelled Cath. And I don't know about you, but I am feeling bold. And I feel like I want to try to change any mention of the word fesh in my vocabulary to a ka, because that's what they were for me. And if anyone wants to follow me, let me know. You know, you want to start calling it a ka, then call it a ka with me. Um, but ka encapsulates the emotions that I was going through at every single competition. There's I don't know. I don't know any other proper word than ka right now. Fesh just doesn't feel right anymore. I want to abandon that. It's not right for me. It's not how I would describe my experience. It was a ka. So, I want to invite you guys. Please comment, DM me, anything. Just, I want to know what are some other things that would be said that you're noticing, that you're picking up on, that feels like it doesn't quite fit. And maybe your actual lived experience says something different. I also wanted to ask you guys, like, what'd you think about using the term Irish Dance Master instead of Irish Dance Champion? I don't know. Let me know. Like, I think it's really important that we start thinking about these words, not just in Irish dance, but in life as well. What are your words? What words best describe your experience? Anyways, I just want to say thank you so much to Oona for coming onto the podcast for this incredibly healing conversation. And I do want to do a quick little shameless plug that if you do want to support this podcast in any way, there is a Patreon that exists. The link will be down below. 100% of the proceeds will be going to this podcast just so I can, continue maybe paying for some editing, maybe a room, maybe some new microphones, maybe just update some things. You know what I mean? 100% is going to go back into the podcast. So if you'd like to do any donation, you have an extra $5, I would sincerely appreciate it deeply, deeply, deeply. Anyways, guys, I'm going to leave you there. And yeah, I am so excited for the next episode. I am going to double click heel spin to that one as soon as I can. The Dear Brambling Podcast is a podcast dedicated to my little bramblings, to the next generation of humans growing up in the world, as well as to anyone who might be looking for a little more guidance in their life. It is hosted by me, Luke Benoit. Editing and sound design are by Cedar and Sound, MB Productions, and Hideout Productions. The music that you're listening to is called Curiosity, and it's composed by Matthew Grazier at Grazier Music. The logo was designed by Misaki at Hostess Misaki on Twitch TV. And if you'd like to follow me on any social media, you can do so on Twitch as well as on Instagram at Lucatronosaurus Rex. And to anyone who is listening to the podcast this far in, I just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I really do appreciate it. I do, however, need to say that this podcast was brought to you for education and entertainment purposes and should not be used as a substitute for actual licensed coaching, counseling, or therapy. If you are experiencing some sort of pain in your life and you need some help, I definitely recommend shopping around for the right coach, counselor, or therapist that is right for you. With all that being said, I really do hope that you're doing something today to take care of yourself, and I do hope that you have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.